All right, so Carlos, who has, oh, sorry, I should start from the very beginning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another ACO. Today we have a really special guest with Jeffrey Everett. Do you go by Jeff or Jeffrey?
Either one, as long as it's not jerk.
Okay. Jeffrey was recommended by a good friend and also an ACO regular, Carlos Gonzalez Fernandez, who unfortunately is working today. So he's not able to, yeah, exactly working. He's not able to actually be here to introduce Jeffrey. But in lieu of that, he did write a very lengthy but wonderful kind of introduction for me to read on his behalf. So here I go. Hello, all. My name is Carlos Gonzalez Fernandez. I'm not, but anyway. And I'm happy to be introducing artist Jeffrey Everett for today's Art Clinic online talk. I'm also sorry that I'm not able to attend today, as I am a huge fan of Jeffrey's artwork. I first became aware of Jeffrey's art during my band years. We would play all the regular clubs around DC, and I would see these fantastic show posters by an artist called El Jefe. This was Jeffrey's AKA before his current one, Rockets Are Red. I was immediately taken with his artwork. The composition, the details, his posters always seemed richer and more vibrant than the others I would see or that I would make. There would always seem to be stories that you could see in his designs. They felt like still frames from movies. Oh man, how I wanted my band to be in one of his posters. Over the years, I've enjoyed watching Jeffrey's artwork evolve. Recently, I was lucky enough to work with him on a video promoting his upcoming books, collecting the years and years of poster designs he has created. I can't tell you how much fun it was to be given so many files of his artwork to pour over for editing. It was also daunting to see someone be able to create so many unique designs. The ability to be able to make hundreds of designs that are meant to be able to draw someone into a single moment is exceptionally rare. Even more so than Jeffrey's expertise with composition, color, textures, and architecture is his ability to imbue the characters in his posters with so much emotion. Even designs that don't have people physically in them still are able to create human emotions to the viewer. Even when the figures in the designs are silhouettes in windows, they are alive with feelings. Jeffrey is an artist that I love to know about. He is someone I believe who loves what he does and has that rare fortune of being able to find projects that are also aligned with things he loves. And now to explain more about his artwork that I love so much, let me hand things over to the master himself, Jeffrey Everett.
Oh, that was so nice. Carlos is one of those people that enters into your life and you just feel so lucky. And then, like, he is equally as hardworking and cares about his projects as, like, I care about mine. So working with him, I knew that I had to hold up my end because he would keep raising his level. And I am just so, like, thankful to, like, know people like him, yourself, this group. It just makes me feel better about the world. So that was really nice. Thank you very
Well, I
much.
know he was very sad that he couldn't be here. When he and I were working together, he constantly referred back to you and what a fan he is of your work. So I'm excited to see what you have to show us today.
Yeah. I have a PDF. Should I just share that right now? Cool. All right. So I just put out a book called Let It Bleed. It collects 20 years of doing posters. And if you can still see the picture of me, the book is roughly bigger than my head, weighs over 6 pounds. We did things like silver inlaid printing on the cover. It's a pink cover, which people are like, "You're not doing black, that's all you wear." And I was like, haha, defy expectations. And then the inside of the dust jacket is all of the bands plus other delightful things that you'll have to buy the book to find out. So this has been something that I started while working while doing work during the COVID times because it's like, oh, other people are doing books. I should do one as well. So I'm going to start off. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. I'm going to start off talking about the name of the book, which is I get a lot of questions about. Now, I'm more of a Beatles fan than a Stones fan, but I always liked the term "Let It Bleed" for a variety of reasons. Now, first off, Leonard Cohen. I have I initially did the book as my mom is doing what is called Finnish death purging, where she is getting rid of everything that she doesn't want uh me and my relatives to go through when she's gone, which is that's probably the stuff I do want to find. But I have over 600 posters. I have 5 copies of each poster, taking up, I think you could probably see it right there, a whole corner of my studio. And I just do not want my kids to have to like figure out what to do with them. So I figured books are easier to carry than posters. So the name of the book for me has 3 parts. One is I remember being younger and walking into the old 930 Club, which is what this is right here. And when you would be walking in with the band playing, you could hear the music bleeding out through the walls when you were on the outside. You could hear maybe the intro music, between band music. You could hear the bands playing, when you got there, all of that. And I always loved that feeling of going into a different universe, going into a different reality for a while, getting away from it all. And I loved how that sound would just bleed into me. There's a design aspect with ink creep and ink bleed. So ink creep is when you put ink down on a page and the droplet of it expands. And then with ink bleed, it's when it goes right off the page. And so I wanted to talk about that as a design aspect. But lastly, I wanted to talk about emotions and how I've been called a bleeding heart many a times. I have like literally just hearts tattooed on me. I think I have about 7 of them all over my body. And for me, my work is all about emotion. It's all about shared emotion and community coming together. But really, my posters are supposed to be describing music, which, as Martin Mull once said, writing about music is like dancing about architecture. So I don't know what doing art about music is, but I'm gonna give it a try. Now, this is one of my favorite bands. It's a band called Idols. They're from England. And even though this is just a photograph, you can see and almost feel the chaos of the moment.
Hey, Jeffrey, are you switching slides or just checking?
I
Or
am
just
switching. I am switching
we
slides.
still have the main screen.
Oh, all right. I'm going to go back so you can see all the other stuff. I think
start from the very beginning if you don't mind.
you're like, this dude's talking a lot and not changing anything. All right, I'm going to assume that is due to the full bleed of it. So I'll leave it like this, and hopefully you can see it just fine.
It works great.
So the archive is the mountain, and the published work is the volcano. So this is the 930 Club, which I was just talking about.
It's now the Atlantis, right?
The original 930 Club is now a it's like a clothing store.
Oh, okay.
And then they opened the Atlantis, which is supposedly a recreation of the original 930 Club, but I don't think it has the pillars right in front of the stage. So you can't see stuff, which is usually where I got trapped at the old 930 Club. And it has a balcony, which they didn't have before. But anyways.
Are you talking about, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jeffrey, are you talking about DC clubs?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 930 Club was originally at 930 F Street, and now it's at, I believe, 930 V Street, and it's much bigger. But they opened up a recreation of the original 930 Club, and they call it the Atlantis. So when we talked about ink creep and bleed, you know, the idea of like the ink bleeding off the page, like on this poster. And then the idea of emotions and letting your heart bleed. So like this is a poster, and if you look close, the whack of the head forms a heart smashing into the windshield. And it's supposed to be the idea of just your emotions hitting and what it feels like to have heartbreak. So the writing about music is like dancing about architecture. So right now, so this is Idols. And even without hearing the music, you can see the exuberance, you can see the energy, you can see the passion, you can see the collective of people. You may not know the music, but with this photograph, it has a visceral feel to it. You have a guitar player standing on a barrier, getting held up by friends and the public. You have the lead singer throwing out the microphone to him. You have people hugging and dancing. And then with live music, you have volume, you have the bass hitting you in the stomach, you can have quietness, you have the heat of the room, you have the lyrics, you have beat, all of those things. And all of those things come together to make the experience of seeing live music. Now, with art, you don't have that. You have ink and you have paper. And you try to put those together to create something that will connect a viewer who is not there next to you, so you can explain what you're doing. So as a designer, I try to create a connection between viewer, myself, and the band. Now, the problem with that, again, is I'm not there to explain stuff. And I can't write out how you're supposed to feel. So I use then the ink and the paper for color, for tone, concept, so people can sink into it. Now, any one of these people, like anybody can look at this picture, which both of these were done during COVID times when we're all staying inside. And this was part of my, I called it the solo project, but feeling like the artist alone on a roof playing and wondering if anybody's listening. And maybe somebody is. You have bands playing, hoping to be heard. And then you have people here listening to the music and making their own connections. Because sometimes we're alone, but we are surrounded by our friends and our cats. Our cats are friends? I don't know. I mean, mine certainly have a clear disdain for me. But our friends are the music that we listen to. And then sometimes we wonder if other people are listening in. So continuing with connection, this is for Letters to Cleo when they did their first tour in multiple years, but this was their first tour after COVID. This actually just was awarded an AIGA 50. And when talking to the singer, Kay, she was just like, we want to get back out there and be around people because we're doing all this stuff and no one knows about it. And it made me think about how, as an artist, you create work and you put it out there hoping to find an audience. So it's like sending paper airplanes with messages out into the world. So this is a thin version of me right here, throwing out paper airplanes. And then right here is one person catching one airplane with all the other ones crashing down.
Jeffrey, can you explain the award?
So AIGA 50 is every 2 to 3 years. DC, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia collect the best 50 pieces of design work and showcase them. So this year I got 5 awards. So in theory, I am 10% of the best design in Washington, D.C., if I can be ever so humble. And so you'll have work from like the Smithsonian or like AARP or the colleges, showcasing like their brochures or their websites, animation, movies, all these different representations of design. And you know, my weird punk rock posters somehow got in there. And so with communications, you know, I put in myself. This is actually the Gaslight Anthem, who I did a lot of work with, was touring with the Bouncing Souls, who I love. And their music really plays off of each other. They're both from the same town in Jersey. They both share similar lyrics. Bouncing Souls, who were opening for Gaslight, were kind of mentors to this up and coming band. And so this is actually a story of my grandfather and my grandmother. And he was a bombardier in World War II. And he would send notes home to my grandmother. And he was telling me one night while he was listening to his jazz music and drinking a Tom Collins about how he would carry all these notes in his flight jacket. And after a while, it got heavy, not only physically, but emotionally, because he was going out to fight the Germans and he realized he was thinking about her instead of what he needed to do. And he wanted to make sure that he was present for the people on the plane with him. And so he had to get rid of the letters. Now, he didn't rip them up and throw them away like in this, but the idea that he has these letters and then on the side, she's waiting at the mailbox for him. So it's just kind of the two worlds, you know, the two lives a world apart, still interacting. Now, for me, my dad, who I love immensely, and again, is a supporter, he and I will talk about design. And I'll talk about design with people such as yourselves and all that. And I routinely have to discuss with band managers about what makes good design. And I always say, well, you know, the most popular design, the most popular color in the world is accessible beige, because everybody can look at it and go, yeah, that's fine. But is really that the type of surroundings we have? A lot of poster designers, this is what they do for a living. And on one hand, I love it when my artwork gets hung up in the bathroom. I find it to be hilarious. And I'm like, well, that's where all your best thinking happens. So you're staring at my poster. But it concerned me when I would get job offers that this is primarily where my work would go. And I have had people get angry when I say this, but I'll still stick by it. All of this work gets thrown away. And I have worked in a variety of design studios. And I worked at a design studio once where I was expected to work 12 to 14-hour days. And this was around when I had really young kids. And I realized I am spending time away from my children to create ink on paper that in 6 weeks are going to get thrown away. And that really impacted me. Now, I'm not so ego filled where I'm like, everything I do is a masterpiece. And I do work for the National Institutes of Health doing a variety of work. But even then, I feel like my work is bigger than myself and bigger than just the project on hand. So I want to create rock posters that people collect, that people hang, that people crave. You know, this gentleman here I've known for years. He gets my work and he brings it with him all over. He's in the military. He brings it all over the United States whenever he transfers. This right here is actually in the kids' room. And this is Carlos's place.
I knew it.
So this is actually 2 posters, and it splits right here in the middle. And he's one of the few people that have hung the poster correctly. And so even though this is basically like a cartoon, this still has meaning. So They Might Be Giants did 2 shows. They did a 4:00 show and then a 9:00 show. The 4:00 show was only for children. So the smaller, like the one down here, is only for children. So it's to be hung at their eye line. And the adult one up here, so that you got a sun, you have a moon, and then you have a drunk, I don't know, moose bird thing up high for all the adults out there. And with that, I really have an appreciation for the people who pick up on these messages, who pick up on what I'm trying to do. I don't have 100,000 followers. I have on Instagram a little under 10,000. And I've come to know a lot of people. And it means so much to me when I get the same order from Germany or the same order from the UK or Japan or Australia. There's one gentleman in Spain who I love it. He'll make orders 2 to 3 times a year, and he'll order 8 or 9 posters because the shipping costs are so high. But his address, for some reason, is always an issue. So I have to bring it into the post office to mail it instead of filling out the form online. And he's always, I'm so sorry about that. And I'm like, no, man, like, you're ordering posters and you're paying $56 to mail my stuff to Spain. Like, that's so cool. Thank you. So this is actually one of my most, I hate saying famous, but like most famous posters. And it was done after Hurricane Sandy, when the Jersey boardwalk just got destroyed. And we ended up doing 100 of these posters initially as a myself and Gaslight Anthem as a, oh, we'll do these, we'll sell them for $50. We'll get, we'll give $5,000 to charity. And these sold out in like 10 minutes. And so then we're like, oh, well, that's weird. So then we did an open edition. And I believe we ended up raising over $50,000 for charities that would directly go to the Asbury Park area. And though it's not like Beyonce level giving, it's amazing to me that this community of punks out there existed that came together to support a town they probably haven't been to, because they loved the art, they loved the band. What's important to the artist, what's important to the band is now important to them. And though I have met people who have never been to a boardwalk or seen the ocean who have this tattooed on themselves. And it's really interesting, in like, it means so much to me having my work tattooed on somebody. And these are all based off of work that I've done. So I have to explain this one here. So I did work for a band called the Horrible Crows. And I did this, it's a rosebud with like a kind of a rosary necklace type thing coming off of it. So I get this picture in the mail, or email, and the person was like, I really loved the art that you did, it meant a lot. And so I traced it on my hand and I tattooed it myself on my own hand. And I was like, oh, like that's a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, someone tattooed my thing onto themselves, which is already, I got tattoos, I hate needles, it's painful. And I was just like, that's such an honor. And then I'm looking at the name and I'm like, that name sounds familiar. And I finally wrote back, I was like, did you go to Wachusett High School, which is where I went to high school? And the person was like, yeah. And I was like, did you date a guy named Jeffrey Everett? And she's like, I did. And I was like, that's me. And it was just one of like, oh my God. And it also, to be honest, kind of terrified me. But yeah, so weird how this stuff comes up. So you may not get this reference, but this right here is based off of one of my posters. This gentleman that's in the foreground is getting that tattooed on him. And this guy giving the thumbs up is the lead singer of the band I did the poster for. So this is Brian Fallon from Gaslight Anthem, who randomly came in to get artwork, get more tattoos. And he had to sit down next to this dude who's getting a tattoo of his own band. Okay. I bring that up because my first tattoo was for a band called Damnation. And I got some lyrics tattooed on me when I was 19. And I walked into the tattoo parlor, Jinx Proof in Georgetown, really shy, really introverted, like head down, had my little thing, handed it. And I just hear this person go, yeah, that's a really good band. And I look up and it was the lead singer of Damnation. And I was just like, okay, thank you. I got a Bouncing Souls tattoo from the bass player of Bouncing Souls. That's how much that meant to, this band means to me. Brian tattooed this on me, and he made it from a New York skyline into a DC skyline the day before his wedding, because he was so appreciative of all the work that I had done for them. Not only the quality of the work, but also just financially brought him and his band thousands of dollars in sales. And I was like, hey, I'm in Asbury Park for a concert. Do you have any time to do this? And he opened up the tattoo store shop, whatever, that was closed to do this for me. And I'm really happy because this picture is in my book. And as you could tell, this was done a while ago. My face is much fatter, and my arms are much more cluttered. So I had to put this one in here. So this is from a Bouncing Souls song, and the lyrics are, I'm on the train and I got my phones, people all around, but I'm good all alone. I won't worry what I need to be. Wherever I am, it's the place to be. Hey, do na 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 na. So this poster means a lot to me. One, this was not September 11th, 2001. It was on that day, but not the day. But this is my first poster for one of my all-time favorite bands. This is also how I envisioned my wife when she would travel on the metro. Just headphones on, leave me alone stare. She's got her plaid, she's got her Argyle, she's rocking the Bad Brains and Minor Threat Misfits on her bag. And this was like my love letter to traveling on the metro. And this one means a lot to me because this is actually the day that my grandfather passed away. And so I remember going to the show that night and sitting in the back, listening to them playing songs like Anchors Away and Gone, and just having really happy thoughts of my grandfather. So a few years go by, and I get an email from a woman saying, hey, I'm putting out a book. I love your Bouncing Souls poster. I have it hanging up. Really would love to use it. And her and I started talking, and I realized I kind of know this person. And I then realized I know this person because I read her book when I was a youngster. And it was called I Was a Teenage Dominatrix by Shauna Kenny. And Shauna used to run shows at the Safari Club when I first moved to DC. And I loved just how the worlds merged. And you have connection to these people and you don't even know it. So right here is, I ended up telling her, listen, I love this poster and I love that you love this poster. So let's update it because I've gotten much better at illustration. And let's make it more personal to you. So instead of just wearing Chucks, she's got her Docs on, she's got a leather jacket, she's rocking the straight edge X, the whole nine. And it just has elevated this poster for me personally. Like this is now like a real, like I feel like it really, doing this piece, which again I thought nobody would see. There's 100 of these out in the world. Who cares? But she did, and then she connected to it. Side note, This also won an AIGA 50 award. And this was in 2006. And so they had the AIGA awards at my old, the first college I went to, which was the college, the Corcoran School of Art. And AIGA, for the first time and the last time, had a People's Choice Award. And it came down between my piece and a piece for the Human Rights Campaign. And I wrote the band and I said, hey, I'm going out for this award. Is there any way that you could spread the word? Everyone just gets one vote, log in. We ended up crushing the Human Rights Campaign like 3-1. And that was the reason why that was the last time they had that award. So for me, my hardest thing about doing this work is that though I love the connection I make with people, it is for me terrifying. Because you're basically, if you're successful, you're doing it in public and people expect that from you. When you make a mistake, which could be everything from doing a poster that looks like somebody else's posters to spelling a person's name wrong, though it was right on, you took it from the website, to not shipping on time, to the manager liking it, but the band hating it, and everything else in between. When you make a mistake and or completely fail, you are doing it in front of everybody. And that to me is terrifying. And I go back to the Henry Rollins quote, who Henry is a massive influence on my life. And I put this poster up here because he hated this poster to the point of I had to show him the emails in my iPhone, which I had only gotten a week or two before, to prove to him that his manager agreed to this. And even then, he was furious with me. And he's like, I don't even understand what this means. And I remember saying to him, well, it's Ghost Rider because you did a cover of the Suicide song Ghost Rider. I'm a genius, right? I mean, it's real low-hanging fruit, and I took it. But instead of a motorcycle, he's flying a plane because it's called the Frequent Flyer Tour. He did not find that to be as humorous as I did. Side note, all the posters sold out, so you'd think that he'd be really happy. But, I love Henry, but no, he was not. But this always hits me of, setbacks and complete failure. Hold on. The way the screen is, it's hard for me to see a little bit. Setbacks and complete failure are part of trying to do something extraordinary. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. This might be the single line that sums up my life. And I very much feel that. As I have now completed my book, I looked at over 350 concert posters that I've done, with another 50 or 60 that I didn't put into the book. And I can maybe count 20 where I'm like, yeah, nailed it. I literally have found posters where I'm like, I forgot to draw the guy's legs in. So I don't know how he's driving a car because he's got no legs.
But Jeff, like, just as a question, like, do you find that there the expectations for your work, for your clients, more than anything, like are they more met now than when you first started? I mean, I feel like at a certain point your style is known, so they have an idea of what it's going to look like just based on what you've done in the past. Do you still run into problems where it's just an absolute clash of ideas between the band and yourself, or whatever that is?
I am really lucky that I am not taking on band work unless I'm excited to do it. And at that point, like I just did work for Velocity Girl and Tuscadero, and Velocity Girl was the first date with my wife I ever went on in like 96. And I used to see Tuscadero 2 to 3 times a month for like 10 years, 8 years, something like that. And when I was talking to Velocity Girl, I was like, I love your band. I want to work with you. Here's ideas that I have. This is why I really love this one idea, and we should do this. But also, here's another idea. Here's another idea. And Velocity Girl is one of those rare clients that was just like, you get what we're doing, you get what we're about. We know that, like this quote right here, this poster works for this band. This is not a poster that will work for Slayer or for anybody else. We know that you understand us, but you also understand our public. Because ultimately, like, band managers are like, we want to sell a ton of posters. Can you just draw the lead singer really big and then make our logo as big as their head? Great. That's what we want, because that will satisfy what the client wants. But as soon as you go, yeah, but the people buying this want this to be about your band. Like Peter Saville, who did all the work for like New Order, Joy Division, bands like that. His thing was, if you look at a Joy Division cover, you will know what this music is. You may not know the lyrics yet, but you will know the feeling. And I feel like that's been lost. I feel like when you have death metal logos for Justin Bieber, it's just taking away the meaning of that aesthetic for everything. So draw for the band. Now, when I was desperate for work, there's a lot of stuff that I did that was just big old skull, big old band name, put it out there. And was it still cool? Yeah, but it wasn't as personal as it could be. And I feel like there are some of those I still like, but I feel like those are failures to the audience. Band was happy, but it could have been more. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. I'm just wondering, like, how that, you said earlier that you did work for like NIH and things like that. Like, how is that different in terms of the thought process that goes into the design and the imagery?
So I still do work for NIH. Anything you saw about COVID, I had a hand in. Sorry. So you may like just involuntarily hate me now. It's probably my most publicized work. I was out in Seattle, and I saw one of like the, stand 6 feet away from people signs in a restaurant. And there was a big like F you on it. And my kid saw it. It was just like, that's your work. And I was like, yeah, I've had, you may notice like right there, my drop ceiling is messed up because a cat fell through the ceiling when I was talking with Fauci and like 30 other people. And Fauci was like, I blew it off. And Fauci was like, Jeff, did a cat just fall through your ceiling? And I was like, yes, Dr. Fauci. is the cat okay? Mabel's okay. All right, I'm glad Mabel's okay. And then like right back to like trying to help the world. So, you know, it is all like the work that I do for NIH allows me to do the work that I do for bands. And it's different end product, but it has the same thought process and care to it. So like one of the projects that also just got recognized by the AIG 50, pat on the back, was we did a huge project called the Unite Initiative, where we wanted to focus, to be blunt, on not just old white dudes, because the NIH community is not just old white dudes, but you know, everyone thought Fauci and Dr. Collins. Dr. Collins was the head of NIH. We now have a new head. I'm gonna mess up her name. I'm gonna blame it on my cold. It's Monica Bella Bellaciuti. It's Italian, and I have a big thing of snot right here, so I'm gonna mess it up. But like we, you know, NIH is this huge community, and the researchers are great, but we also need people who mail packages, do security, clean the place, run the tests, get the lunches, deliver the patients, all of those things. And so the Unite Initiative was done to highlight all those people. But I got brought in because all the other solutions were not working. And so I was doing portraits of people overlaid with different patterns using the NIH palette, expanded a little bit. But even though I basically was doing like punk rock posters, but it had a sophisticated sensibility to it. And I think like people see this, you know, I get it all the time, like, oh, you can do gig posters, but can you do anything else? And it's like, yeah, you know, if I can do a captivating concert poster, I can apply that to anything. And it's not just stylistically, it's concept wise. You know, I'm going to lead into this one. You know, it all, you know, everything I do that means something to me comes from a place from the music. So in this instance, it's Against Me, Laura Jane Grace is a huge inspiration to me. And a lot of what she talks about, she's transgender. She talks about what it's like to have a daughter who still calls her daddy, because that's what her daughter knows. And she still loves her daughter so much and just thinks, you know, one day I won't be here and what's going to happen to her, you know, and then one day she's going to die and what's going to happen to her. And so she had 2 coffins for sleep, one for you, one for me. We'll get there eventually. And I took the Brooklyn Bridge, even though she was playing in DC, I loved this idea so much, and made them little coffins. And then Against Me was doing a tour, and I wanted to show the travels of a person. And so the idea of this isn't directly about her journey, but there's a man here, there's a woman here, there's a couple in the middle looking away from each other at the other people. And this is in California, this is in Brooklyn, and then the middle one's in DC, and that's Union Station. And I wanted all of this to be about travel and remembrance, looking towards the future while also looking back. And also like the idea of we all take these journeys, and if you're in your mind like I am, how much of that is spent feeling alone, even though you're in a crowded room. It's like, this is the Sacramento Bridge. And then to keep everything together with that first poster, I did like little coffins in all of the pieces. So there's a coffin here, there's a coffin pattern here, there's a coffin pattern here. Because for me, I love those connections, and I love those Easter egg details. Gaslight Anthem, they were putting out which one is this? The handwritten record, and I wanted to show the journey of basically heartbreak and make these not just posters for a show, but to show emotions with them. So in this one, it's everything I value in life, smooches with someone you love, records, books. And this was kind of based off of the Before trilogy that, oh man, I can't remember his name. Ethan Hawke and I can't remember her name, Julie Delpy did. And it's the idea of like they go to a record store in a bookstore and they're falling in love. So it's the idea of like music bringing them together. And then the girlfriend, for some reason, is doing his laundry, which was in another Ethan Hawke movie, Reality Bites. I watch a lot of Ethan Hawke movies, I'm just discovering. But just the idea that, what's this right here? This is how you tell that, this is how you tell a story. Like, what is this? Somebody, she's doing his laundry and she finds a note from somebody else. What's going on here? I'm amazed that the band let me use their words, like their band name, backwards. Because if this was a laundromat, they would, the name of the laundromat would be reversed on the window. And then lastly, she's all alone, but she's got her records. She's doing fine. And you can see like the travel of the music.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit about, like, you mentioned kind of the Ethan Hawke movie kind of as a joke, but like, how do you come up with compositions and ideas? Like, do you use cinema or photographs? How do you kind of construct your imagery?
I use everything. I take pictures. I primarily take pictures now, or I have friends who will model for me on Zoom, and I'll just take screenshots. Primarily because if I draw a woman, I will get 40 women who will say, that's me. And that's terrifying. I had a woman once claim I drew her, and she had like 100,000 followers and immediately did this is me, we need to go after Jeff. And it scared the crap out of me, because you just get a deluge of you're evil, ah. And I literally was like, no, this was my friend Candace. Here's the picture reference. I'm sorry you look vaguely like somebody else. And so I now always want to own whatever it is I reference. I have like for me, anybody who says that, oh, well, I just come up with art out of nowhere, I think is doing a disservice to the world around them. Unless you're doing purely abstract work, everything you do comes from something else. Even if you're doing abstract work, the emotions and the feelings inside you that make you do that work are impacted by a larger world. For me, I love movies. And I always think of my work as, like you'll watch a movie and it's like a couple is fighting and they both kind of go, and then it goes to the next scene. I'm always like, what happens right after that? Does the guy get up first? Does the woman get up first? Do they go to bed next to each other? Like, what is that? You had the initial, I hate you, boom. Well, what do you do right after that? Because that's life. I wish there were more cutscenes, but there's not. You have to deal with that stuff, So I like to try to get those moments, or just a lot of it's just those moments of quietness that I try to get. I mean, it's really hard to show really visceral emotions like anger or hatred or whatever. It's why I honestly, I don't do political posters much, even though I'm gushing with opinions. It's because if you're doing a poster like that, it's a bumper sticker. It's, politics, world issues are not a sentence, they're a paragraph at least. It's really hard to show that. It's like we could talk about what's happening in Gaza right now, but it's like, okay, you're going to show a dead child, and that's a bummer, but it's not anything you won't see on the news with a longer discussion. So for me, it doesn't feel like it's doing the topic justice. And so for me, try to show communal moments that we can all relate to. And I think that's why people gravitate towards my work, because it is personal. Now, with that, I've probably, like, if I just did like skulls and, like, I think these are beautiful women, but they're definitely not like, ooh, pinup style. I think if I did more of that, like I used to do more of that when I was younger, and those would sell really well. But it was kind of like, oh, that's cute. Moving on. It didn't interest me as much. I have no clue if I'm answering your questions within my ramble. So feel free to be like, Jeff, focus.
Or
I have another question. How do you start,
Sure.
if I may, how do you start the concept? Like, what's your first drawing? If you
Sure, I'll answer these while kind of showing. I could show these. I try to only work with bands I really love. And so there's always going to be topics within those lyrics that I draw from. Bayside, they're from, again, they're from Jersey, and they were doing the Vacancy tour. So I was like, Vacancy, hotel rooms. They have a lot of songs about being done dirty. So, the couple in the room, and then there's a woman down here, excuse me, holding a baseball bat. And it's what is she there to do? Is she there to go up to beat up the guy? Is she there to beat up the girl? Is she there to steal their cars? What's the story? Couple in a coffin, flogging Molly is always about the struggle. So it's, are they asleep? Are they dead? She's, he appears, he's shirtless. We know that. What's underneath? We don't know. Is she trying to comfort him? Is she joining him? There's sharks all around. The ship, this used to be a ship. I tried to make it look like a boat. So it's just this idea of what's about to happen. And the poster for Flogging Molly I did before this is a woman whose hair is tentacles crushing a ship in it. So if you get both posters, they go together. I'm almost done. So like this is National Airport subway station. And this, I didn't actually make the jump, but this did happen in like 97 with myself and then my future wife, where she was on one side, we had broken up. She was on one side, I was on the other after concerts. And it was, I really wanted to talk to her. And I remember just being like, what would happen if I jumped? This one, I always get interesting takes on. The lyrics are about wanting to make a home with somebody and feeling empty because they want that connection. My female friend going through a divorce who had to pay out a lot of alimony to her ex-husband was like, yep, he got half the house. So I was like, oh, that's a cynical take on it. Jawbreaker, the idea of not being able to communicate, wondering if they would pick up the phone if you called, even if you could. The idea of having to write, this is for Jawbreaker's Dear You record, which when I came up with this concept, I was like, this is so good, somebody else is going to do it. And I made it look like hotel stationery with a typewriter. So again, like this was done in 2021. So there's connections. So Jawbreaker talks about loving Kerouac. This is Kerouac's typewriter. Both forms of communications. He's writing a letter, and when the lights turn off, we used glow-in-the-dark ink. So there's Kerouac, there's Oscar Wilde, who are kind of two people against each other. The cat is based off the first Jawbreaker record, where it's a kitten, now it's a cat. The Lion of DC, terrible person that you're still thinking about. And so, yeah, the album's off, they're doing the Dear You record. So this is done like a hotel stationery. So it's things like that that always, I think, make my posters stand out. This was one of 20 posters they did. And, this is the only one that sold out on tour. These last two Jawbreaker posters won AIGA 50 awards. Yay, humble brag. Sometimes you go so deep, people don't appreciate it, especially the band. This was the original poster for Newfound Glory. I called it Meow Found Glory. People are like, you should do Mew Found, and I was like, no, Meow Found Glory. This is my cat Yoshi, who, if anybody knows me how much I love my cat. I'm not going to take my shirt off fully, but I got Yoshi tattooed on me. He's such a good beau. And I did things like all cats are beautiful, because this is in Berkeley, like center of leftist politics. So it's like all cats are beautiful. I did a black paw button, which I found to be hilarious. I had them like X'd up for straight edge. So this is my cat Yoshi, but then this is my right down here, except for the hairy chest and paws. This is my son Alex wearing the coat. I did work for Iggy. Like, woo, Iggy. Talk about longevity. Couldn't use any photos of him. So I had to collage his face. And then this is actually my older son, Max. I put a few little bit more wrinkle lines on him, but I made, down here, Max. And, Iggy's a street walking cheetah with a heart full of napalm. So I did like the glowing heart, and I did a varnish so it actually glows when you move it. And then I gave him like a little Tigger tail right down here because he's always bopping around on stage. So I'm going to end with this one. And it goes back to what we were talking about. To be an artist, I believe you have to be subversive to a degree. You have to put things in there that are not expected. For this, Idols is all about, they have a lyric about Evel Knievel, who breaks bones for his people. And the idea of Evel Knievel as this, badass guy who's always getting hurt, but really was always in the hospital because he would do this stuff and get hurt. And for me, art should be about love and showing compassion and empathy, because it's at the end of the day, good design is not about you. It's about you and your audience. And having that compassion and empathy between people is what makes your work mean more. So that is it. So if you have questions, insults, I don't need to hear the insults. I say them to myself enough. But hopefully hopefully you enjoyed this. And if we get cut off, I just want to say thank you so much for having me.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating. I have so many questions, mostly kind of based on like, do you feel like you see the world differently? Like, if you're on Brooklyn Bridge, you see coffins in the archways. Like, how do you put those two, like, I don't even know where to begin with that question, but like, how do you just see the world differently? How do you find inspiration in the world? Is it just like keeping you up at night and you think, oh, this will be great? Or is it constantly doing a lot of sketches ahead of time and then it happens on accident? How do ideas come together for you?
For me, it's a lot of daydreaming. Like, I love doing menial work because it allows my mind to wander.
You have a sketchbook.
So I don't use a sketchbook anymore. I literally just have like stacks of paper everywhere around my desk that it's just like I literally just have like paper that I pick up and I grab, because I've learned I have big paw hands. And so when I'm drawing in a sketchbook, my hand goes off the page. So I can't fully utilize the book. But a lot of times, like I tell my kids, like, you need to be excited about the world and allow yourself to have your heart broken. Like, not everything is in your phone or in your computer. Those are great tools to then reach out. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of documentaries while I work. I have ADHD.
Yeah.
And so I literally, like, I have a laptop and I have a computer. And on my laptop, I have like Canopy with a K, which is a wonderful resource of free documentaries as long as you have a library card, which mine keeps getting turned off. So I'm like, do I owe money or something? I need to look into that. But like I love reading. I love art books, and I just, at a certain point, it's just, the world is really big. I never want to visit the same place twice unless I have to. I just want to go and see stuff. And when you're in that world, like, pay attention. Like, one of my favorite stories is we went to I think it's called Cathedral Rock in Sedona. And as we were walking up Cathedral Rock, we got to the top and there was like a woman doing yoga there. And she was like videoing herself. And I was like, hey, we're about to go to the top. Do you want to go there first? And we'll just kind of wait for you and then we'll go up after you. And she was like, oh, yeah, it's really nice. Thanks. Then we wait like 15 minutes and we're coming down. And she takes out her phone. And as she's walking by, I just hear her going, Steve, no, we're breaking up. We're breaking up, Steve. I just can't do this anymore. And I remember just being like, oh, she went up there and had a revelation about what a jerk Steve is. I need to put that somewhere in a poster, And so I have a poster I did for a band called Emily's Army. And it's a woman sitting on a heart-shaped boulder that's wedged between two cliffs. And it's based off of that interaction that I saw. And that is actually closer to the Devil's Bridge in Sedona, which is precisely that. It's two cliffs with a rock in the middle. And it's just, if you just kind of pay attention to the world gives you the things to draw from, And like the world's a fascinating place. Just like go out and see stuff, go do stuff. I mean, it's extraordinarily uncomfortable for me to like do these things, but if you don't get uncomfortable, you're not really going to enjoy the world.
So when
That's
did you
great.
know you could, I'm sorry, when did you know you wanted to do posters as opposed to any other kind of art when you were like at the Corcoran or even beyond a little?
I've always been drawn, I didn't know what it was called, but I was always drawn to like book covers and music. And I grew up in a really, really, really small town. I grew up in the town where Mary Had a Little Lamb was written, and that was like our only claim to fame. We downtown had a delicatessen and a pizza shop, and everyone got excited when another restaurant was going to open, and the other restaurant ended up being another pizza shop. Like that is how pedestrian my hometown was. So my connection to the larger world was going into Boston and buying books and music at Newbury Comics or Tower Records. Art was for museums. And I loved art, but I was always like, oh, that's a special trip. That's not for people like me. In the sense of like, I'm never going to make something interesting enough to go into a museum. So I can probably, like, I liked comic books. I can draw kind of comic books. I can draw an album cover. And so that for me was the catalyst. Like Edward Gorey, who did he did all the books for an artist, a writer named John Belair. Like he lived on Cape Cod. Like I knew, like, and the John Belair books took place near the Merrimack River where my grandparents grew up. And so these things felt real and tangible for me. Edward Gorey, he did the work for Mystery Theater on PBS. So more people saw his work than have seen a John Singer Sargent piece in the Boston Museum. And I was like, I can do that. Now, for me, like, I don't consider myself an illustrator. I cannot draw. I have literally had people like, hey, can you just draw like what a bicycle looks like for me? And I kind of go like, oh crap, I literally, it's hard for me to visualize like how a bicycle goes together. So I call myself a designer who can illustrate rather than just an illustrator. And even then it's very, very hard for me to draw. These are not, I'm quick now because I know my process, but it is not something I do for fun. I enjoy it, but it's not like a fun thing for me. So did that help?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. We went over a little bit on time, but it was such an incredible experience for us to have you, Jeffrey. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And the book is for sale.
Yeah.
It is we're calling it still in pre-order. But it's at, if you want to check out the book, it's called Let It Bleed. It's at let-it-bleed.com. I'm doing another talk tonight at Atomic Books. It's such a pleasure to talk with you all. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
your patience and lack of spears. And if anybody has any other questions or whatever, feel free to send them.
Someone in the audience mentioned they bought your poster for their wife. I don't know if they're still here. Maybe they want to pop up and tell you.
Oh, I see it in the chat. Thank you so much.
Yes, and they may no longer be here, but yes, the accolades will flow in, and remember that people will not only be here in person, but they watch the posted video, so that will be up in a couple of days, and we'll let you know.
Wonderful.
I also want to say that we have the ArtClinic Online. We'll take a little bit of a break, but in January, sponsored by Montgomery Art Association, we're going to do a plein air art forum with 4 artists. Christine Lashley, who was a contributor to the ArtClinic Online earlier this year, Jill Basham, Nancy Tankersley, and Stuart White. They're going to talk about the plein air circuit in the DC area and how it kind of expands into the nation and what it's like. Come talking as a group of plein air artists who've really made a career doing that as composition. So we're excited to try something different with the program. But once again, we want to say thank you to Jeffrey for talking about his work and his book. I'll do my best to put up the order link on your ArtClinic Online page too, so people can find that pretty easily.
And would it be on Amazon too as a pre-order, Jeffrey?
We are doing this right now. We did this as a Kickstarter. We printed 1,000 books, and right now we have already pre-sold over 700.
Whoa.
And now I'm doing a exhibit at the Punk Rock Museum. It's 95% sure in February. And I think they're going to just take the rest.
Great.
So
congratulations.
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's that thing of like, you don't think anybody notices, and then you're like, oh my God, people notice. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for people who have contributed to the ACO through donations. We really appreciate you. And you'll hear individually from us too.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Happy holidays.